Bishop Kuka, remember I've told you I will be in heaven before you. No, not only because I'm older, no, but because whatever I have done wrong, God will forgive me. I like what we want to talk about. Why many reforms in Nigeria, why many reform fails in Nigeria, and what we can do about it. Outgoing head of service, I want to thank you for all that you are doing and all that you have done and all that remain to be done. And I want to again thank Agimokwete Foundation for the great work they are doing with you, and you acknowledge that. I must say that I was, and they will tell you, I was a little bit, what do you say? I was not sure what the result would be working with the, trying to get a reform. But you listed a number of things. I want to list 5 essentials. I call them principal elements in reform. 1, the initiator. It is very, very important. 2, after it has been initiated, the one who will drive it. And you use the word driver more than 3 times in your lecture. It must be tried. It must be driven, rather. Who is the driver? The initiator, the driver, then the owner. Every reform must be owned. The initiator, the driver, the owner, the executor. Who will execute it? And then the 5th one, the sustainer. For me, this is my experience in public life. Starting from what I saw when I came back in 1959, and I had the opportunity to interact with some of our great men in the public service of this country, the S.O. Adebos, the Udochi, the Atas. You talk about training, which is very, very important. And one of the things I observed when I had the opportunity to look at the civil service or public service in general closely is inadequacy of training. And that was why we built what we built in Badagry. I don't know how much is being made use of, but you talk about training here. Training. Then after you have had all the 3 principal elements that I spoke about, and they must be there. And they must be there continually. And I will talk about that before I conclude. They must be there continually. The 6th point is that the reform must be accepted, and it must be spread, and it must be farmed up. You talk about legislation. If legislation is what will farm it up, so be it. Whatever will farm it up must be there to farm it up. You talk about money. If money is needed to farm it up, so be it. You talk about reward. If the reward that needs to farm it up, so be it. But it must be farmed up. If not, you aren't going anywhere. I hope that when Obi comes to speak, he will talk about what she did in due process, and what she did in education before she ran away to the World Bank. And what were the reasons why those things were not sustained, either in due process or even in education. The greatest pain of reform is discontinuity. That is the greatest pain, the continuity of personnel. Now, the best thing for any reform will be the initiator, the owner, the executor, what else do I call it? The driver and the sustainer to be continued. If possible, the same personalities. If you can get that, you are lucky. But if not, then you have to have continuity. Any break in continuity means virtually the end of the reform. And then one thing we must understand is reform is a lifelong thing. The process of reform, even in your daily life, in your own life, you are reforming. You are making adjustment. So why should it be difficult? I don't believe it should be difficult. When I was looking for debt relief, one of the things that they told me as I went around the world is reform. And I keep telling them, you usually will tend to leave the technocrats. And that's a mistake. They have power. And I mean that. They have power. And let me give two examples that they themselves told me of the power of the technocrat. One was my late friend, Amejoda. When he was permanent secretary, Lagos Affairs Ministry, the policy, according to him, was one man, one plot. And the then Chief Justice of the Federation, Sir Adetokunbo Ademola, has got one plot, and he wanted a second one. He went to the Minister of Lagos Affairs, who ordered that he should be given a form for a second plot. And of course, Amejoda gave him the form for a second plot. He filled the form, he submitted it, Amejoda put it in his locker and put it, and nothing. So after about 6 months, Sir Adetokunbo came back to the minister and said, the form I filled, I had nothing. And the minister called Amejoda. Said, the form that Chief Justice filled, he had nothing. He said, I won't know what happened to it. So he said, give him another form. He gave him another form. And they opened a temporary file. And the second form and the file went the same way. Sir Adetokunbo never got a second plot until he died. Now that is the power of the technocrat. I'll tell you another one. The other one, the man involved is still alive. If you like, I can mention his name. He, when we left as military administration and the Shagari administration took over, the minister concerned took over his ministry. And he called the permanent secretary and said, all that nonsense that you people have done with the military, we will not tolerate it. I want to see everything. And the permanent secretary, yes, minister. So within a week, when you enter the office of the permanent secretary, you won't see his head. And what did he do? What did the minister, the permanent secretary, what did he do? Rather than just write a minute and for the minister, he will say, refer to file number 2, refer to file. So there will be 4 files. So within 1 week, the minister's table was full of files. And when you enter, you won't see the minister. So the minister then called him and said, well, permanent secretary, no. And the permanent secretary said, oh, minister, you want to see everything? He said, no, not like that. He said, like how? He said, no, I want to see essential things. Ah, okay. And then the permanent secretary put it in a minute, sir. So, and the minister was foolish enough, he put it in a minute. So he has now given the permanent secretary the power that he didn't even have. He has now said, and the permanent secretary will be the one to decide what is essential, what is not essential. And now that is the power of the technocrats. Now, if you don't know it, you better know it. But the point is that they have power. The political head group too have power. They have to get their power together and really respect and understand each other and work together. And that is when you can have a reform. So, now let me end on a note of where I will continue to respect the Nigerian civil service, public service, particularly the technocrats, until I die. When we were trying to deal with the issue of the last vestiges of decolonization and fighting apartheid, we decided that Britain had responsibility for Rhodesia and had some form of responsibility and influence on South Africa. But how can we push Britain to move on South Africa, Rhodesia? We decided to move on the economic front. And we decided to nationalize, is it 2 or 3? 3 items. And what, fortunately or unfortunately, one member of British Parliament has addressed Nigeria as a toothless bulldog. So that afforded us opportunity to bare our teeth. Previously, I had a study carried out for me by a group of 3 men. What really do we deal with? What do we deal with Britain? And what that came up to is that we put 250,000 men and women in jobs in Britain by the amount of import we got from Britain. 250,000 men and women. So I decided to carry my cabinet, my governor, and my colleagues in the Supreme Military Council. This was when I was military head of state. And to make sure it did not leak, I wrote the memo myself. I called a joint meeting of Supreme Military Council, Council of State, and the Cabinet. On the morning of the meeting, at 8 o'clock, I called Leman Chiroma, who was the head of service and secretary to government. When he read the memo, he took the memo from me, he went to his office, he read it. Within 5 minutes, he came back. He said, "This is hot." I said, "Yes, I know it's hot." He said, "The British will react." I said, "Yes, I know they will." I said, "But by then, the 3 of us, myself, Yakubu Danjuma, and Shehu Yaradua, have had a meeting, and we have decided that was the way we are going." And then Leman Chiroma said, "My advice is that we shouldn't go this way." I said, "Sit down." I said, "We have put our heads together. We have decided that no matter what we are here in Nigeria, for as long as any human being of dark color is regarded as a second citizen anywhere in the world because of his color, then we are second citizen in the world. We will not accept that." And then we took our memo. And then after that, Leman Chiroma said, "Oh, I don't know you have thought of it to that extent. Then we back you up." We took our memo, went, and we carried it unanimously. And the civil service backed us up. We even had what we call Southern Africa Relief Fund, where civil servants contributed 5% of their salary. 5% of their salary. That is what you can get from civil service. That is the type of reform. And they back us up. And it was that reform that made us to stand out. And we became, even though in terms of distance, we were far from frontline, we became a frontline state. That's what this reform can do for you. Thank you very much.